Right now, somewhere in the United States, a man is raising an animal on a quarter-acre of land that produces more usable protein per year than a 500-acre cattle ranch. He does it quietly. He does it cheaply. And in 34 states, what he is doing could get him fined, have his animals confiscated, or land him in front of a judge. The animal is not exotic. It is not dangerous. It has been raised by human beings for food longer than cattle, longer than chickens, longer than pigs. Your great-grandmother almost certainly ate it. Her great-grandmother almost certainly raised it. The animal I am talking about is the common rabbit, specifically heritage meat breeds, like the New Zealand white, the Californian, and the silver fox, raised in managed colony systems that turn a single acre of land into a protein factory that outperforms beef production by a ratio most people cannot believe until they see the numbers themselves. And yet, in most of the country, zoning laws, HOA regulations, and state agricultural codes make it illegal or functionally impossible to raise rabbits for meat on your own property. Why would the most efficient meat animal ever domesticated be the one they do not want you to have? That is the question no one in the agricultural industry wants to answer, because the answer leads to a trail of exposed economics that makes the modern meat industry look like what it is. A system designed not to feed you as efficiently as possible, but to keep you dependent on a supply chain that someone else controls. By the time you finish watching this, you will never look at that patch of grass behind your house the same way again. You will see it for what it actually is, a protein production facility waiting to be activated. One that requires no tractor, no feedlot, no veterinary degree, and no permission from anyone who profits from your dependence. The domestic rabbit has been a cornerstone of human food production for at least 2,000 years. The Romans were among the first to practice what they called leperaria, walled enclosures where rabbits were bred and managed as a controlled food source. Roman agricultural writers like Varro, writing in the 1st century BC, documented rabbit colonies that fed entire estates with minimal grain input. The animals ate forage, kitchen scraps, and wild plants. They bred quickly, matured quickly, and converted what would otherwise be waste into dense, lean meat. When Rome fell, the knowledge did not disappear. It migrated into the monasteries. French monks in the 5th and 6th centuries refined rabbit husbandry into an art. They selectively bred for size, temperament, and meat quality over generations. By the medieval period, rabbit was one of the most commonly consumed meats across Europe, raised by peasants and lords alike, because it required almost nothing in terms of land or infrastructure. A family with a small garden and a wooden hutch could produce enough rabbit meat to supplement their diet year-round. This is not obscure history. It is well documented, and it continued in America well into the 20th century. During both World Wars, the United States government actively encouraged backyard rabbit production. The USDA published pamphlets. Victory garden programs included rabbit hutch plans. Families in cities and suburbs raised rabbits on porches, in garages, in backyards no larger than a parking space. It worked. It fed people. And then, almost overnight, it stopped. What happened was not a cultural shift. It was an economic one. After World War II, the American meat industry underwent a consolidation unlike anything the world had ever seen. Between 1950 and 1970, the number of cattle feedlots in the United States dropped by more than 60%, but the remaining operations grew massive. The same pattern hit poultry. The same pattern hit pork. Vertical integration became the model. A handful of corporations controlled breeding stock, feed supply, slaughter, processing, and retail. By 1975, 4 companies controlled more than 80% of the American beef market. The economics of this system depended on one thing above all else: scale. And rabbits do not scale the way cattle, chickens, and pigs do. Rabbits are efficient at the small level, the household level, the homestead level. They do not lend themselves to the factory model. They are fragile in confinement at industrial density. They do not respond well to the antibiotic-laced feed regimens that make confined chicken and hog operations viable. In short, rabbits are the perfect food animal for the independent producer and a terrible product for the corporation. So the corporation did what corporations do. It did not compete with the rabbit. It erased the rabbit. Zoning codes written in the 1960s and 1970s began classifying rabbits as livestock rather than small animals, which put them in the same regulatory category as cattle and horses. animals that obviously require acreage most suburban and even many rural homeowners do not have. One stroke of a pen, and the most space-efficient meat animal in history was regulated as if it needed a pasture. Follow the money and you will find the motive every single time. Now, let me explain why the rabbit deserves to be called the most efficient meat animal on Earth, because the numbers are not a matter of opinion. They are a matter of biology. A beef cow requires approximately 18 months to reach slaughter weight. During that time, it consumes roughly 12,000 pounds of feed, most of it grain, to produce approximately 450 pounds of retail beef. The feed conversion ratio for beef cattle is roughly 8-to-1, meaning 8 pounds of feed for every 1 pound of meat on the table. A meat rabbit, by contrast, reaches slaughter weight in 8 to 12 weeks. Its feed conversion ratio is approximately 3.5-to-1. That means a rabbit turns feed into meat more than twice as efficiently as a cow. But the real advantage is not just the ratio, it is what counts as feed. Rabbits are hindgut fermenters, which means their digestive system is designed to extract nutrition from fibrous plant material, the same kind of material that grows in every yard, every ditch, every untended field in America. Grass clippings, dandelion greens, plantain leaves, clover, compost pile scraps, vegetable trimmings from your garden. A rabbit can convert these into high-quality animal protein without a single bag of commercial feed ever entering the equation. Think about what that means for your land. You are already growing rabbit feed. You are just mowing it and throwing it away. The protein content of rabbit meat is approximately 21% by weight, compared to roughly 17% for chicken and about 19% for lean beef. But rabbit meat is also lower in fat, lower in cholesterol, and higher in certain essential amino acids than any of those alternatives. The USDA's own nutritional database confirms this, though they have never once promoted rabbit as a superior protein source in any public dietary recommendation. A single breeding doe can produce between 40 and 60 offspring per year under managed conditions. Each of those offspring reaches a dressed weight of approximately 3 pounds in 10 to 12 weeks. That means one doe produces between 120 and 180 pounds of dressed meat per year. A modest operation of just 8 breeding does on a quarter acre of land can produce over 1,000 pounds of high-quality meat annually. Compare that to the roughly 450 pounds you get from one steer that required 5 to 10 acres of grazing land and a year and a half of your time. The math is not close. It is not even in the same category. A single acre devoted to managed rabbit production can yield 9.3 times more usable protein than that same acre used for beef cattle. That is not an estimate. That is arithmetic anyone can verify with a calculator. And the feed conversion data, published by land-grant universities that quietly study this animal while publicly promoting the cattle industry that funds their research programs. The suppression of rabbit husbandry in America was not a dramatic conspiracy carried out in a smoke-filled room. It was quieter than that and more effective. It happened through economics, regulation, and cultural engineering, all working together over decades. The American meat industry generates approximately $213 billion in annual revenue. That figure depends on consumers buying protein through the supply chain, from feedlot to slaughterhouse to processing plant to grocery store to your kitchen. Every step in that chain is a profit center for someone. When you raise your own rabbit, you bypass every single one of those profit centers. You become, in economic terms, a leak in the pipeline. Now, multiply that by 10 million households, 20 million, 50 million. The rabbit is not just an animal. It is an exit door from a $200 billion system, and systems that large do not leave exit doors unlocked. Consider what Americans spend on protein. The average household spends approximately $6,200 per year on groceries, and roughly 30% of that goes to meat and protein products. That is approximately $1,860 per family per year on protein. A backyard rabbit operation with 8 does, fed primarily on forage and garden waste, costs between $200 and $350 per year to maintain once established, and produces protein equivalent to what that family would spend over $1,000 to buy at the store. The savings are not trivial. Over a decade, a family running a modest rabbit setup on a quarter acre saves between $15,000 and $18,000 on meat alone. That is money that does not flow into the feedlot system, the pharmaceutical feed additive industry, the cold chain logistics companies, or the grocery conglomerates, every dollar you do not spend is a dollar they do not earn. And that is why the regulations exist. Not to protect you, not to protect public health, not to protect neighborhoods from nuisance. The regulations exist to protect revenue streams that depend on your inability to feed yourself. The evidence that this system works is not theoretical. It is living and breathing in communities that never abandoned it. The Amish and Old Order Mennonite communities across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana have maintained rabbit production as a standard homestead practice for generations. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, it is common for Amish families to keep between 12 and 30. Breeding does alongside their other livestock, producing a year-round supply of meat with virtually no cash expenditure beyond initial breeding stock. Their production records, kept meticulously in handwritten ledgers, show consistent yields of 140 to 170 pounds of dressed meat per doe per year, generation after generation, with no decline in soil quality on the land where the rabbits are housed, because rabbit manure, unlike chicken or hog manure, can be applied directly to garden soil without composting. It does not burn plants. It does not carry the pathogen load of other livestock waste. It is, pound for pound, one of the most balanced natural fertilizers available, with an NPK ratio of approximately 2.4 to 1.4 to 0.6, and it improves soil structure with every application. In the Sichuan province of China, smallholder farmers have raised rabbits as a primary protein source for over 500 years. China today produces approximately 800,000 metric tons of rabbit meat annually, more than any other country on Earth. And the vast majority of it comes not from industrial operations, but from household-scale producers, raising between 10 and 50 animals at a time. These families achieve food security on plots of land that would be considered worthless by American agricultural standards, plots of a quarter acre or less, often on sloped or marginal terrain. In post-war Italy, the tradition of cunicultura, household rabbit raising, rebuilt entire rural economies. Italian families in Tuscany and Umbria who maintained rabbit colonies through the devastation of the 1940s recovered faster and with better nutritional outcomes than those who depended on the emerging industrial food supply chain. Their children were healthier, their soil was richer, their food costs were a fraction of their neighbors' expenses. These are not romantic stories about the past. These are documented economic outcomes that demonstrate what happens when families retain control of their own protein supply. Here is how you start. The first thing you need is not a rabbit. It is a structure, and it does not need to be expensive or complicated. A basic rabbit hutch can be built from materials you likely already have, or can source for under $40. You need untreated lumber for the frame, half-inch hardware cloth for the floor and sides, and a solid roof, which can be plywood, corrugated metal, or even repurposed roofing material from a tear-off job. The hutch should be elevated at least 30 inches off the ground to protect the animals from predators and to allow waste to fall through the wire floor for easy collection. Each breeding doe needs a space of approximately 30 by 36 inches. A buck needs slightly less. For a starting operation of 4 does and 1 buck, you are looking at a structure roughly 8 feet long, 3 feet deep, and 3 feet tall, divided into individual compartments. You can build this in an afternoon. Your breeding stock is the next step, and where you source it matters. Do not buy rabbits from pet stores. Find a local breeder raising New Zealand whites or Californians, the 2 most proven meat breeds in North America. Expect to pay between $20 and $40 per animal for quality breeding stock. You want animals that are at least 4 months old, have clear eyes, clean ears, and firm, muscular hindquarters. Ask the breeder about the lineage, specifically how many kits per litter the doe line typically produces. You want does from lines that consistently kindle litters of 8 to 10. Anything less suggests weak genetics for meat production purposes. Once your rabbits are housed, feeding begins. And this is where the real savings live. Start with a base of good quality grass hay, which you can buy in bulk for $4 to $6 per bale, and each bale will last your small herd approximately 2 weeks. Supplement with fresh forage from your property: dandelions, clover, plantain, compost greens, carrot tops, the outer leaves of lettuce and cabbage that you would otherwise discard. In the summer months, a well-managed yard can supply 70 to 80% of your rabbit's dietary needs at zero cost. In winter, hay and stored root vegetables carry the load. Commercial rabbit pellets can supplement when forage is scarce, but they are not necessary as a primary feed if you are managing your forage supply correctly. Within 10 days of bringing your rabbits home, you will notice something. Your kitchen scraps are disappearing. Your garden waste has a destination. The dandelions you spent years fighting are now a crop. The system begins to make sense almost immediately, and it makes more sense with every passing week. Breeding is straightforward. Always bring the doe to the buck's cage, never the other way around. Does are territorial and may attack a buck introduced to their space. Mating takes less than a minute. You will know it was successful when the buck falls off the doe sideways, which sounds almost comical, but is the reliable indicator that experienced breeders look for. Gestation is 31 days, remarkably consistent. Around day 28, place a nesting box in the doe's cage filled with clean straw. She will pull fur from her own body to line the nest, and if you see that happening, kindling is imminent. Average litter size for proven does is 8 to 10 kits. The kits are weaned at 6 to 8 weeks and reach slaughter weight of approximately 5 pounds live weight by 10 to 12 weeks. The most common point of failure for new rabbit raisers is heat. Rabbits tolerate cold far better than heat. Temperatures above 85 degrees Fahrenheit cause stress, reduced fertility, and in extreme cases, death. If you live in a hot climate, position your hutches in shade, provide frozen water bottles for the animals to lie against during heat waves, and ensure adequate airflow through the hutch design. This single factor accounts for more failed rabbit operations than any other cause, and addressing it from the start is the difference between frustration and a freezer full of meat by your first autumn. By week 12, you will process your first animals. A dressed rabbit yields approximately 60% of its live weight in usable meat. That means a 5-pound rabbit gives you roughly 3 pounds of clean bone-in cuts. A family of 4 consuming rabbit twice per week needs approximately 312 pounds of dressed meat per year, which 4 breeding does can produce with room to spare. You will have surplus. That surplus becomes barter material, gifts to neighbors, or the foundation for expanding your operation. What you will not have is a grocery bill that includes $13 per pound for boneless chicken breast or $19 per pound for beef tenderloin. You will have meat that you raised, that you fed, that you processed, and that cost you pennies per pound in real inputs. What you have just learned about rabbits is not an isolated trick. It is the first door into a complete system of household-scale protein production that was standard practice in this country for generations and remains standard in much of the world. The rabbit is the anchor, but it connects to everything else. Rabbit manure feeds your garden directly, which grows the forage that feeds your rabbits, a closed loop that industrial agriculture cannot replicate because industrial agriculture is not designed to close loops. It is designed to sell inputs. Once your rabbit operation is stable, the same infrastructure supports quail, which lay an egg nearly every day and occupy even less space than rabbits. A covey of 40 Coturnix quail in a 3 by 8 foot enclosure produces approximately 35 eggs per day, eggs that are richer in nutrients per gram than chicken eggs and can be raised in areas where chickens are prohibited because most municipalities do not classify quail as poultry. The integration goes further. Rabbit manure supercharges compost, which grows black soldier fly larvae, which are 42% protein by dry weight and serve as a complete feed supplement for both quail and chickens if you choose to add them later. The larvae also consume kitchen waste at a rate that eliminates the need for municipal garbage service for organic material. One system feeds the next. Each animal or organism in the chain reduces your dependence on an external supply and increases the productivity of your land. This is the pattern that was systematically dismantled in the 20th century, not because it failed, but because it succeeded too well. A family that feeds itself does not need the feed store, the grocery chain, the pharmaceutical company selling antibiotics to factory farms, or the government agency justifying its budget by regulating what you can raise on your own property. Your independence is their lost revenue. Your self-reliance is their obsolescence. The entire edifice of modern industrial agriculture rests on a single assumption, that you cannot feed yourself. Every regulation, every zoning code, every cultural message telling you that raising your own meat is impractical, unsanitary, or old-fashioned exists to reinforce that assumption. The rabbit proves the assumption is false. 4 does, and a buck on a quarter acre of land prove it is false. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The knowledge you now have is not new. It is older than this country. It is older than the Industrial Revolution. It is older than the corporation that would prefer you never learned it. Every civilization that lasted, truly lasted for centuries, understood that the foundation of household sovereignty is the ability to produce your own protein without asking permission and without depending on a system that profits from your inability to do so. The Romans knew it, the monks knew it, your great-grandparents knew it. The only generation that forgot is the one that was taught to forget by people who had something to sell. You have a quarter acre. You have $40 in lumber. You have a yard full of dandelions and clover. Everything you need is already in front of you. The only thing that was missing was the knowledge, and now you have that too. What you do with it is between you and your land. The system does not want you to start. Start anyway.